As a child, we all long for a hero. As a society as a whole, we search for that leader that can be our hero. But as we mature and as we grow, it dawned on us that the hero is inside every one of us. And in the world's social media, we all start at zero. And slowly we search deep within ourselves to find who we are. And we have that moment of truth where we embrace that the hero that we've been searching for has been there all along. It is living deep inside of every one of us. And we start embracing that journey and we become that hero that we search for.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to episode 91 of Zero to Hero, presented by J29 Creative Group. Got another awesome guest that is coming at you guys today. He is the sales director for OmniLife VR. His name is John E Avocado. Let's go ahead and bring him in. Johnny, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing fantastic. How is everybody out there?
I hope everybody out there is doing well. I personally, every day I wake up and I get to breathe another breath is an amazing day for me. So that's just kind of the way I live my life. But yeah, I hope everybody that's out there that's tuning in also feels those same sentiments, or at least your day is off to a fantastic start. But what about you, man? What do you guys got going on over there at OmniLife VR?
Gee, I'll tell you what, we're cooking something all the time over here. You know, we run an entertainment lane, the Disciples of Gaming, but at OmniLife VR, we've expanded what virtual reality is pretty extensively beyond that. You know, we tie in AI and then a whole lot of some of the top tier experiences that there are to bring a product to the market that just nobody else does. So we're always cooking something pretty awesome up over here.
I love that. Yeah, so I want to talk about that a little bit because, when VR really came out, it was gaming, right? I mean, that was the application for virtual reality. I think that's really kind of all people saw about it at first. How do we get into this medical space of, we can do physical therapy, we can do counseling, we can do tons of different things through VR now. How did we get there?
Well, I'll tell you, can I give you a little bit of a story for that?
Please.
So, recently we just went to the BTBY experience, which was the Becoming the Best You, which is it's a mental wellness, physical being, financial security, get your crap together, right, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And so we go into the schools and we talked about leadership and about self-empowerment. And so one of the things that we did over the weekend is that we're always looking to grow and expand our group and bring other individuals in who might have a voice that's different than ours. Because sometimes in the personal development field that we determined that, you need somebody that looks like you or sometimes sounds like you or says the words that you wish you could.
Sure.
And so we've got a pretty good ringleader. You may know who she is, Brenda Ringwood. She was kind of brought this group together. And every time that I work with her, I'm always just flabbergasted. I never knew quite what to experience the first time I went to a BTBY movement, and I was blown away. And again, it happened at this last, we don't even call it a conference anymore, we call it an experience. And the reason so is she brought in an individual that I didn't think fit with the group. A lot of us are a lot of professionals. We really try to put polish and we really work hard on what our performance is and take to heart what we do and how it affects and the intention that we have with our interactions with people. And there was a guy that she brought on board. There was a guy by the name of John Drury. You may know him from TikTok as the Dancing Trucker. And when she brought up to us that this guy should be part of our crew, I really kind of balked at it at first. I really didn't know if that was going to be a good fit for us. But I trusted Brenda and I went along for the ride. And I'll tell you, I was absolutely flabbergasted when we found out who John Drury is and what his journey was. His journey, we thought it was just this guy dancing on TikTok. But if you unwrap the tattoos and you look past the labels and you see who he is underneath, he's a guy that really suffered traumatic loss and had to understand how to forgive somebody for something pretty horrendous that happened in his life. Now, I don't want to tell his story for you, but what it did to me is it made me look at somebody all over again. And that's what we've had to do in virtual reality. We've had to have people take a look at virtual reality all over again. Because just like you said, we used to have this connotation that virtual reality is about entertainment. But all new technology falls into entertainment first, whether it's cave paintings on a wall or whether it is, the camera for the first time, whether it's the TV for the first time. Entertainment was how we pursue almost all technology initially. It's a tendency to explore the curious things in the world that draw our attention. And so new technologies always fall in line with that entertainment. And then the other one that kind of falls in line after that is to start to be that business as it comes around and that technology begins to mature. I mean, you imagine what we did with phones, what we did with computers, this same technology is the same iteration. What we see virtual reality doing is replacing the standard desktop. In the future, you won't have a keyboard and a mouse and a monitor. You'll have some sort of an input device that's going to look very much like what virtual reality is right now, even into the future as it evolves. And so there's so much more that we can do with virtual reality than just entertainment. It took about 10 years for the industry to mature. One of the things that did happen to us, there was a pretty negative impact on the industry, was right away a bunch of big money got in. And as soon as that big money got in the game, they sucked out all the talent. And guys who used to be on about a 1.5 year long cycle and were out in the industry, that were explaining what they were doing, that were teaching other individuals how to grow this industry, all those guys got caught up and were wrapped up under NDAs, non-competes, and got put on 7 or 10 year projects and just pulled out of the industry. So it took a long time for the industry to reconnoiter the development cycle that we needed to bring about, developers that were of competency and capacity. And that's where we are now. It took about 7 years for equipment to come down in price that was quality. And the stuff that you find commercially out on the market is not quality. And we can have a long conversation about what all that is, regardless of what the PS has done or what Apple has done. Those just aren't quality products. Now, what we do work with here is the highest quality equipment. And of course, we couple that with the highest quality experience. We have access to developers all over the world. We've been doing this for about 10 years. We're connected to those individuals. And we're oftentimes what we refer to as a pipeliner. We'll work with a client to determine what their virtual reality need is, and we'll bring the equipment and the experiences together to include development of new equipment or experiences.
That's really cool. So somebody that's watching this right now that maybe is in an industry that doesn't have any virtual reality applications, if they come up with an idea, they can come to somebody like OmniLife and say, hey, this is kind of how I would like to see this applied to my industry. And then OmniLife can kind of go hand in hand and kind of partner with them to create that kind of thing. Am I hearing that right?
Absolutely. One of the attempt was at first, that we would just be resellers of some of this technology. We thought that was going to be what our space was because that was so in line with what entertainment was. But we quickly discovered, especially through COVID and through the evolution of the industry, that a few things we had to do was make sure that there were developers available to create these experiences. And so we had to find those guys and gals and make those contacts early. And I'll mention gals particularly. One of the things that our founder did, Marco Stanich, is he recognized and realized very early that there were not near enough folks in the development side of this. And so we're kind of a faith-based organization. It's kind of how we started, was kind of our Disciples of Gaming group. That name kind of gives it away just a little bit. And so part of his mission, as he owns a number of companies, part of his mission when he was trying to spread OmniLife and make more of it was he went to Pakistan and discovered quite a bit of disparity. And one of the things that he discovered was the way the women were treated. So he took it upon himself and he developed he supported a section of a university. We call it OmniLife VR University. And it's in Pakistan, and we support them with technology and experiences that they can use to learn to become developers for themselves. And he put in charge of the development process, in charge of the whole thing, a woman, which is pretty unheard of in Pakistan. So as OmniLife, we've been breaking those barriers and making those connections and developing the development side of this for a long time. When anybody can come to us with an idea. Of course, there's certain lanes that we specialize in, but the truth is that there are very few individuals, and I would dare you to find another company that even claims to do what we do. But you're right. If you have an idea, that's absolutely what we do. Is we can help you bring that idea to fruition in virtual reality. Sometimes if somebody has like a pre-existing program, like we work with a lot of behavioral health therapists, and so we do a lot of behavioral health in virtual reality. Which virtual reality is an amazing platform for this. What we can do, if I start to talk later about how we capture someone's focus and what the performance is for how you retain that information and how it's guided to you, really falls in line with a lot of these modifications that we would like to do mentally or physically for ourselves. Virtual reality is an amazing tool that allows us to overcome some of our own inborn resistances to taking in that information or performing to the degree that we could.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see a lot, especially with the amount of social anxiety that people face today, right? I can see definitely some applications with kind of releasing some of that, right? Being able to communicate on a level playing field, right? I mean, there's a ton of different things.
Oh, there's so much that we do. Now, when it comes to main lanes, I guess, that we say that we work in, there's of course the entertainment lane that we work in, and that's a separate company that's a sister to ours, Disciples of Gaming, that works with us on a number of different ways. But OmniLife ourselves, our intention is to bring professional grade and commercial grade equipment into the workplace. And so normally where we work is in mental health and physical therapy. And those two things fall in line with my history as John E Avocado, and why I even came over to OmniLife VR. Was a little bit of that. But at OmniLife VR, we work mainly in physical therapy and then in mental therapy and trauma therapy. And now the trauma therapy we separate from the mental therapy with just a touch right now because of the way we approach that. We've been a proponent and a contributing member to what's called the Brave Mind, a program developed by Skip Rizzo, who very early in virtual reality's, the virtual reality industry's beginnings, he decided that one of the great uses for what we could do here was to try to do exposure therapy to a greater degree. And from Skip Rizzo's original Brave Mind programming, there are a number of other groups out there that work within this trauma therapy space. And we have tools for these clinicians to use that are just unbelievable. We used to talk about exposure therapy to try to put somebody back into a simulacrum of the situation that they were in, to try to give them tools and experience and guidance to come through it a second time. One of the things that we can do in virtual reality in that space is that we have control over that environment, so we can ramp it up or ramp it down live while we're interacting with that client. So the clinician has amazing tools. What we're beginning to do to bring AI in online with that is making, when we talk about the word transformative, I mean, it's going to be totally overused by so many people, especially when you compare it to what some of the things that we can do when we bring AI appropriately to our world. And this is one of those spaces where we can begin to pick up and understand the nuances quicker and faster than a clinician can, and provide a readout for that clinician to understand what would be the best methodology to interact with that client in the moment, as opposed to just from a book learning objective point of view.
Absolutely, yeah. The speed that you can accomplish things through virtual reality, be able to change those environments, I'm sure is absolutely incredible. So I do want to talk a little bit about Disciples of Gaming as well. Obviously, as we mentioned at the beginning, entertainment is the door that opens a lot of this stuff, right? So for people that want to get out there and experience this, what's going on at Disciples of Gaming?
So you come down to Disciples of Gaming. Disciples of Gaming is what we refer to as an affiliate location. So it is our flagship location that we use to kind of show off what our technology coming into a space looks like. Now, our technology coming into a space can look at it in a number of different ways. The highest end commercial grade equipment is some of what you see right back here behind me, what we call the Omni Rig. Now, when we want to make a really compelling psychological story, that's when we bring in this equipment, whether it's for entertainment or whether it's for mental health therapy. Or if we're trying to really make a convincing situation, especially like in sports training, then that gives us, we want to use this more robust equipment. The big difference between this and what you would see commercially on the market is that instead of a standalone unit, these are tethered units that are tied to, first the cloud computing through broadband, but of course a robust onboard computational capacity that you just can't get through the unwired headsets. We can push higher bandwidth, give a greater we do more computations, so that means that we have a much better visual. The speed and time in which we interact is so much greater. And so we bring those things into those kind of spaces. What was the question? I kind of got off track there.
Now, just tell us a little bit about Disciples of Gaming. So how can people really get in there and then try it out?
So come down to Disciples of Gaming. So at an affiliate location, you can come and do all the things that we offer. So entertainment down here is absolutely amazing. You can it's a family, fun-oriented atmosphere. You can come down and bring the kids. You can rent out the whole facility. We've got 8 units that you can have at one time. It's only $35 an hour to come and play an hour's worth of VR. If you bring a buddy, we'll give the 2 units for $50 for an hour. You can rent out the whole facility. That's 8 units for, like $400, and you can get an extra hour for $100. So for 2 hours, $500. It's a great party. We've got some of the most amazing experiences down here. Some of the fun ones are the virtual reality escape rooms. The one that really ties to me right now, what talks to me a lot right now, is the Alice in Wonderland. Now, my wife Kenya and I have gone through that a couple of times, and that's a whole lot of fun. My podcast partner, Coffee Cup Chuck, raves about it a whole lot too. The Alice in Wonderland is an amazing experience. So virtual reality escape rooms and about any kind of PvP virtual reality game that you would want to play. There's a number of fun ones, from Dick Wilde to the Elven Assassin and I'll tell you, one of my favorite silly games is a thing called Loco Dojo. And it's just like a bunch of dumb little mini games, and you're all in there together. I really like to bring groups in here and do professional development with them. We do leadership training and coaching, and we put these guys into this game. And one of my favorite aspects about virtual reality, especially currently, is it becomes a leveling playing field. Your physical attributes or even your speed only has so much of a capacity in your interim of the interaction in the game compared to some other mediums. And it's so new to so many people that I can put people in just a varied age group into virtual reality together, and they're all kind of on equal footing. And so it's so much fun to see them all learn and explore an environment together. It's pretty interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I definitely see that being a great tool as far as, not only getting the team out of the building, right, to have a little bit of fun, but also as a culture builder. I've seen quite a few reputable companies that I know of that have made a visit to you guys, and it looked like they had an absolute blast.
So I'll tell you, I want to bounce off that just a minute. So we talk about some of our partners out there in the world. We are working currently with another group called World Vision, who does tournaments. Now we have run our own tournament league, Disciples of Gaming, which is an online virtual reality league. There's prize monies and rankings and the whole 9 yards. But we're working with them, and we're working with a third partner that I can go ahead and talk about now. And it's called Chicken in the Pickle. Anybody heard of this place?
Oh yeah,
yeah,
that's really cool.
So on October 8th, we're going to work with World Vision, and we're bringing the world's first virtual reality Racket NX tournament that you can play in and compete and be ranked. Now, the reason that this is important, not only is it chicken in a pickle and it's going to be a great time, but Racket NX, we've just started to work with them. They are a partner of ours. Racket NX is the world's first Olympically recognized video game, and it's virtual reality. So Racket NX will be a competitive sport in the next Olympic runoff. So you can, for the first time, play an Olympic virtual reality sport, and you can play that right here at Disciples of Gaming, and you can come down and start practicing because the tournament on October 8th is full of prize money and the whole 9 yards, and a whole lot of bragging rights for winning the first World Cup or the first tournament cup for a virtual reality Olympic rated sport. It's never happened before. It's the first time. And that's what we love to do here at OmniLife and Disciples of Gaming, is get in on things at the beginning. You don't take on a name like John E Avocado because you want to sit back and watch things happen. And you don't take on a moniker like I Make Shit Happen because you wait for people to do it. We get out there and we make it happen. And I'm going to tell you what, we've been so excited about bringing this to fruition and to really bring on the entertainment side, some of the factors that people really wanted. They wanted to have that competitiveness. They wanted legitimacy. They wanted to, if you're really going to get yourself involved into gaming, much like you would any other sport or hobby, these people want to be taken seriously, and they want what their sport is to be taken seriously. And so we have the great honor and the great privilege and distinction to get to bring it for folks for the first time. And I don't know, we're going to knock it out of the park.
That's incredible. Yeah. So, might finally have an opportunity to be an Olympic athlete now. So, I appreciate it. That definitely wasn't happening before, but maybe we could do something. That's
right. It's a brand new sport. I mean, it's not even like pickleball's got folks, but Racket NX hasn't hardly got anybody. You can get in there now and make a name for yourself.
Incredible. I love it. Well, let's get into the meat of it here, Johnny. So I'm going to ask you to put away OmniLife. Okay, I'm going to ask you to put away everything, with the motivational speaking, and I know all that has a part of making up who you are, but setting all that stuff aside, who is Johnny Avocado? Give us your elevator pitch.
Oh, man. So Johnny Avocado is somebody who I became, somebody I decided I wanted to be with intention. When I was a young man, in retrospect, I understand it now. At the time, I didn't. As a young man, I lived very much as if I had been conditioned. The tradition conditioned me, my family conditioned me, society conditioned me, and I was taught to please, to wait my turn, stand in line, and it'll all come to me if I work hard and prayed about it. And I got to, about 40, and it turned out that wasn't it. Along the way, I was an Air Force veteran. I joined the Air Force when I was, before I was 18. It's been my 18th birthday in basic training, and I got a lot of conditioning there. And when I came out, I had a very hard time transitioning back to what was called a basic lifestyle. You show up at a job and a guy threatens your job. He's threatening your family. He's threatening your livelihood. And you're taught how to take care of things, but just not civilly. And so a lot of the tools that I had for problem solving just didn't translate the way they needed to into the civilian world. And I was full of rage. I was very angry. I had a lot going on. And my wife wound up, I'll say it, she saved my life. I was on a path that I probably wasn't going to return from if there hadn't been some sort of an intervention. And she managed to be the person at the right time that stepped in and said, "Hey man, let's take a look at what you got going on here." And she was one of the first people that helped me realize that I was living within a conditioned reaction to the world as opposed to an intentional want from the world. What did I want out of the world? And it really started to make me think. And along the way, I wound up getting my shit together. And I decided that if I could help anybody else do that, then I sure had to. And so I started to try to really be thoughtful about this. And along the way, I started to kind of crisis counsel a little bit to some of my fellow vets. You know, kind of, I know they were having trouble, and they would get a hold of me, and I would talk back to them and kind of help them out. We ran a robot league in the basement for a couple of winters, and we had a bunch of kids. You know, I'm always the guy that everybody talks to me, and so we had a lot of kids that turned out they were having some trouble at home, and I couldn't help but make some suggestions to the kids or make some suggestions to the parents. And then this went on for a few years, and pretty soon it got to be where I started to have, whether it was at jobs or whether it was just out in public or anytime that I wasn't by myself and I struck up a conversation with somebody, it would turn into what I would call these, and I don't mean to be blasphemous here, but into what I call Jesus moments. I would be standing there talking to 2 or 3 people, and the next thing I know, there would be 10 people listening to me, and then 20 people listening to me, and 30 people listening to me. And people would come to me and they would say, man, you really said that in a way that I never heard before. And it really made sense to me, or it really made me think the way that you were presenting it. And it really kind of struck me. And a few people instigated me to a little bit and said, hey, man, what you're doing really is making change in some people around you. Why don't you see if you can kind of take this serious? And not that I hadn't before, but I hadn't really considered it as anything that I was really going to pursue. But then as I realized, the responsibility that I could have if I could command an audience like this, I'm a guy that's been on a journey my whole life trying to figure it out for myself. And this is just the thing that struck me, it was, if you could get these people to pay attention to you, and they do, if you can command an audience, I have a responsibility to that audience and what I'm going to say to them. And so I've really taken it upon myself to get educated. And so I started to dig into psychology, particularly positive psychology is what it's referred to, because we know a whole lot about how and why somebody's broken. Positive psychology is the intention of looking to see why we do what we do intentionally that works out for us and try to reproduce that. And much in the whole development world, and I can kind of cut to the chase here, my look at personal development, professional development, product development, which I also do as an inventor, is all essentially taking the tools that we have innately within us and putting it out onto paper so we can see it. So all the things that we do in personal development is already the mechanism that's within your mind. We just put it out in the world so we can all look at it, talk about it, and try to have intention about how those levers are flipped for us. And so I started to dig into that. How do all those levers work? Where are those switches at? And what can we do to make us us? Now, a lot of my history had been from the Air Force. I had trained with people from all over the world. I went through the Air Force at a very interesting time. In the 70s, we had Vietnam, and we learned a whole lot about how we didn't have soldiers prepared for what they should be. In the 80s, they took a whole lot of that information and tried to make something sensible out of it. And in the 90s, they started to implement it. And when I went to school in the Air Force in the 90s, I mean, they did all sorts of testing to us. I went to school in the middle of the night. There was a particular time of the day I was eating. There was a particular diet we were on. I didn't weigh enough. They were worried if I got shot down and captured, I didn't have enough fat on me to live. So they put me on the skinny boy program and had some other guy push me in the wheelbarrow when we did the mile. So there was a whole bunch about some of the understanding of how the body works and how the mind works. And although they didn't say it to us in that many words, I'm a pretty intuitive guy and pretty intelligent, and I picked up on the backside systematic, the systems of how all this worked, and I carried that with me. And then when I got to about this point in my life that I came back and had to figure out my basic transition, most of that information that I was looking for was stored in sales and marketing materials, because they were the individuals that had the money and the reasoning to go find out why we do what we do. Now, you look at how much money is dumped into sales and advertisement compared to how much money there is published in books and videos for personal development, and you can see that massive disparity. Now, if people understood and realized the reason that marketing and advertisement spent so much money on research, you would understand why this is important to you. And so as I was digging for this information, I started picking up all this other stuff. And that's kind of what led me into many of the things that I do to help my fellow inventors, or what I do at OmniLife, or even as a professional product or personal development coach, is to bring the same systematic understanding of how and why we do the things that we do. And so that's pretty much what John E Avocado is in a nutshell. My name came about, if you want to get into that, because that's always a fun one. My name came about, one of the things that I developed along the way is a little bit about how we're accountable to ourselves. And as much of the space that I work in Omni now, in the mental wellness space, people who suffer trauma get captured in that moment, and their thoughts don't evolve. Have you ever known somebody that was, very damaged when they were a kid, or very damaged at a particular time in their life? And the rest of us have grown and evolved, but that individual still uses those very same mindset. They never came out of it. So that is
Right.
that is one of the most destructive parts of trauma, is that you get captured in this mindset. And so one of the things that we do know about emotions and about success is that you have to transition from one to the next. Your emotions kind of help stabilize and initiate and instigate, depending on what's going on, your state of mind. That's really what your emotions are for. When we're angry at something, then we want to tear it up. When we're sad about something, we can't forget about it. If we're lonely for something, then we want to strive to do everything we can to attain it. So our emotions kind of put us into these roles about how we have approached life with a mindset. And when someone is stuck in their trauma, that's the very same thing happens to them. They stay in that one mindset and never come out of it. So what I discovered with working with vets and with kids is that if I allowed them to recognize and realize that maybe they were somebody else, if they gave them another persona, they could begin to recognize that a different person would make different decisions. A different person would react in a different way. And so much of the trauma captures you in your personal identity, that the trauma is what your identity is. And so I started to help these guys and kids self-identify as someone else. This other person makes these decisions. These other persons doesn't have this history. This other person, steps out there in the world and is not afraid. And so they would take on this mantle. And after a while of using this mantle, much as we've all heard, fake it till you make it, you just got to put yourself out in that situation. You just have to believe that it's true. And then when it does come true, then you'll believe yourself the next time you say it. And so what I began to recognize is that through this alter ego, through this methodology of someone thinking of themselves as maybe a superhero and not themselves, began to give them the opportunity to perform, which is something that we oftentimes miss out as part of that structure that we need to make changes, is the opportunity to perform. Is we can learn so much about it, but you got to take that knowledge and apply it. And they were able to do that so quickly because they were self-identifying differently. And so Johnny Avocado was born. I had to put my money where my mouth was and take the moniker that I used for so long and really make it my name. And so thus is Johnny Avocado. There's a whole great story about us doing it in the park one day, a ceremony. It's a lot of fun. We'll get to that another day.
I love it. I love it. No, you brought up a ton of good points there, and I really resonate with your transition out of the Air Force. I'm a Marine myself, so I'm very familiar with the set of tools that you are provided with, right? And that when you take those into the real world, they don't always work, right? We got to figure out some different tools to use there, right? So I love that. Yeah, and I think, kind of what you're talking about there at the end is really, outside of the traumas, even if somebody doesn't have trauma to speak of, right? Everybody obviously has gone through trauma, but I think something that all of us as humans and humans that are trying to succeed deal with is imposter syndrome, right? Which is a little bit about what we're talking about there, right? If we kind of leave the trauma out of it, I mean, everybody kind of deals with these similar things. And how do you get yourself out of that? And I love that you are, hey, give yourself a reputation to live up to almost, right?
Mm-hmm.
Give yourself, who you are, right? And then you can fulfill that, right? So that's absolutely amazing. And I want to get into your, go ahead.
Well, that was one of the things. Actually, I brought that up at the last BTBY experience that we had. That was one of the closers that I gave to him. I don't want to give the whole thing away. You can go check out the video yourself online. But one of the things that I did give to them is I talked to them about, as they left and as they went on, that they needed to transition from a journey to a quest. Sometimes we feel like that we're just on this aimless wandering journey, and that's true for discovery. That's great for discovery. But once you kind of have an idea what you need to do, you need to make it determinative, and you need to turn it into a quest. And so one of the things that I try to give them, which falls very much in line with your zero to hero that you talk about here, is I talked to them about being their own hero and the tools that they needed. And one of the tools that I told them that they already had, reminded them of, is our ego. Sometimes we think about ego as a bad word in the psychology world, but your ego is the reason that is oftentimes your internal instigation, your own motivation to do things. Now, in therapy, they'll oftentimes try to solve or fix your problems based upon your past and try to dig down deep into it. When we start to talk about personal development or professional development, I'm not necessarily going to go fix a whole bunch of stuff. What we're going to do is we're taking where you are now, have an understanding of where you are, and put you in a place that you want to be. Now, there's a whole lot that we can do to try to go and repair damage. But even here at Omni, the way that we work with psychology and the virtual reality is, if we often think of it as somebody who's missing a leg. Okay, we can do all sorts of things to teach them to walk again, to include giving them a whole nother leg. And it's even crazier as we look down the future. But the one thing that happens is that person learns to walk again in a new way. They can still do the same thing, but it's a different way they do it. So now when we start to think about psychology, it needs to be the same way. We even use these terms, I'm stuck in a rut, I get caught in a rut. And there's a physiological understanding about how the brain works and the way that our thoughts work. And we actually absolutely do run the same neural pathways again and again. We get into a mindset. And because they become so familiar, they become so worked, that's the direction our path, the mental faculty wants to use all the time. So now we have to interrupt that process where everything from all these development mechanisms that we understand to try to interrupt that process and get out ahead of that. And so of all the things that we could do is really just understand that our ego is one of those things that drives us. And rather than try to run from it, we need to embrace and understand what our ego does for us. My ego tells me that I deserve this. My ego tells me that I should believe in me. My ego says that there's nothing that's going to get in the way. And when we talk about all the tools that we need to have, sometimes people try to separate the ego from the tool, and the ego can be a tool, just like all things can be a tool or a weapon. And you could use it against people or you can use it on yourself. And ego is very much one of those, much like fear, very misunderstood about how we use that. A good ego is what every hero needs. You need to know that this is for you. It belongs to you. You deserve it.
Yeah, and how are you going to use it, right? I think that's the backside of right, which really turns you into the heroes. Okay, now that we've built ourselves back up, what are we going to go do, right? Because I think villains have egos as well as heroes, right? So how are we going to put that out into the world, right? How are we going to translate that into what we're doing, right? Very
Right.
powerful. I love it. Now, I want to get into the John E Avocado branding because we talk a lot about social media on this show. I also want to talk a little bit about OmniLife's social media journey, right? But tell us about that journey for you of starting from 0 followers to where you are now, and then dip into OmniLife and what their strategy is a little bit as well, because obviously you guys put out a ton of video content, which is fantastic. That's how people are taking in their stuff.
So social media was something that I had to take on, much like my journey. I was a forced introvert, but then even though I was a very extroverted individual, so then when I came out to be an extrovert, there was this whole suite of tools that I didn't even know that I needed, that I had to discover. So social media is like that for a lot of folks. You need to find those tools for yourself. And there were a couple of things that I'm sure that you talk about on this platform as well. If you talk much about marketing, is success was a very big part of that formula. One of the things that we recognize about success is that it requires focused, concerted effort. Now that doesn't always mean it's everything. It doesn't always mean it's 100%. But the more consistent, precise effort you can put into something, the more return that you'll get from it. So we want to think oftentimes much about the same way with our marketing, and especially online. We can put our money all over the place. It's like a craps table. And there are so many places for you to put your money, but only one number is going to hit for you. So one of the things that I would maybe recommend that folks do is determine what platform is the one for you to work on and spend a lot of time working on that. Of course, you want to always have some feelers out. You never want to put all your eggs in one basket. But if you find a niche, or if you find a connection to your user base, then if whatever platform is the one that they want to be on, that's where you should be. A whole lot of what I do and talk about in professional development is a term that I refer to as precision. It's about us deciding to do something before we're in the situation. So oftentimes many companies suddenly put a company together and they're like, well, it's time to advertise. And then they just want to throw money all over the place. Well, let's think about who your client is. Who's your target product? What is your product? How are they going to interact with it? What kind of platform do they want? Understanding your demographic and what your product is. Now, on social media, oftentimes that product is you, those interactions. The great thing that I would say about marketing is that you want to talk about associations and not necessarily about your product or yourself. And if you're always doing a bunch of name dropping, that's not good either. But you want to try to find that fine balance where rather than name drop, you want to find an interactivity or a collaboration with that individual so that you have a true organic tie. And I really work to make sure that my network grows, not because I'm just putting out massive amount of content, but that my content connects to new individuals on my same platform through my same medium. Now, if you look at what I do, and especially some of the things that we're getting ready to do, as John E Avocado, I'm getting ready to come out with a brand new podcast called the Positive Avocado 360 Show that I do with my good friend Coffee Cup Chuck. Now, if anybody knows Coffee Cup Chuck, he's on Instagram every freaking morning, and he's putting out his blast every day about stay positive, people. I mean, the dude is a machine, and his consistency on that singular platform is really the call for his success. Now, the same thing for me. I try to stay within that same video medium because that works really well for me. Now, that video medium can kind of go across a couple of platforms, but as long as I'm still working within that same medium and connecting to my clients the same way. Now, for me, that's really about messaging, about, embetterment and personal development. And so I try to make a tie when I can. Now, you don't want to force it, and you don't want it to sound outrageous, but anytime that you can make those true associations about what you're doing, then you connect yourself to the people that are associated with it. And so strong branding, probably the avocado that stands out the most, right? I spent a lot of time on that. It was a years long process about deciding who I was and what my name was. And when I first started using the word avocado, it tasted terrible in my mouth. I hated it. It felt cheesy. It felt over the top. I felt like I was going to be a sellout to try to use a name like that. I felt, man, that people were going to think of me as a carnival barker as opposed to a professional. And it really was a hard sell for me first. And there were a couple of things that I had to do to convince myself that was the right method. And the reason that it was convincing to me was not because I thought it was right. It was because when I put it out there, everybody else thought it was right. Everything from the imagery that I used to the words that I used to the way that I approached somebody. Some of it was, a lot of it was a lot of mental exercise and a thought experiment before I put it out into the world, but it was tried, true, and tested. I made sure that it was the thing I wanted to do a little bit before I put it out there. I didn't just put trash out there, but then I paid attention to what worked. And so the name avocado itself, man, I had to have it. It starts with an A and ends with an O. It's got 3 syllables. Man, we're buttery smooth and delicious. It's trending all over the place. There were just too many reasons for me to not use that word that had appealed to me and also universal appeal to the rest of the world. So when it comes to that branding, man, make sure that you're using something that really connects with your client and not just with you.
I love that. And it's a superfood. And you're a superfood.
Yeah, that's right. It's good for you.
Really well. Yeah. No, I love that. That's so good. Yeah, no, that's amazing. And it's you talked a lot about the platform there, right? And I think with personal branding, that is huge, right? I mean, you have to know where you're going to connect and who's going to resonate with what you're putting out, right? Obviously, at J29, we deal a lot with product branding, right? Or service branding, that kind of thing. But one of the things that we like to think about is what happens if Facebook's gone tomorrow? Now, obviously, Facebook is never going to leave, right? Facebook is very well established at this point. There's Facebook and there's Instagram, which are both Meta, right? That one's not going anywhere, right? But what if Microsoft decides to close down LinkedIn tomorrow, or TikTok gets banned, right? I mean, there's so many different things that we have to think about from a product or a service standpoint of how do we meet your audience where they're at on the platform that they're at, right? How do we tailor that content to a TikTok audience versus a Facebook audience, right? Versus a LinkedIn, right? They're vastly different things, right? So I think it's one, knowing where your audience is, but then 2, it's finding how your audience on those different platforms interacts, right? And picking up that audience as well. So that way you're truly building a holistic online community versus a TikTok following, right? Or an Instagram following, right?
And then the other thing about it too is really kind of understanding the tools of your trade, understanding how the algorithm on that platform works and how SEO works. Everybody's got a web page, so you got to know a little bit about how SEO works. That's your search engine optimization. That's how people find you online. But the other one is how you work that algorithm. And there's so much going on the different social media platforms, that, especially with the rise of AI, they are breaking down our bots really hard because they want organic and true conversations and interactions, not a bunch of computers talking to each other, because that's not good for the network, and that's not good for their bottom line if it's just a bunch of bots talking to each other. They need to interact with real people. And so one of the things that I really decided is not too long ago, I've worked with so many inventors and things that I've never had to build my brand very much until the last few years or so. And I really discovered that a lot of the information that I was telling so many of my other inventors what they needed to do was a lot easier to say than it was to put it into practice. It's like, oh, well, you got to have people comment on your posts, and you got to share it outside of your network, and you got to get other people to talk about it. Well, how do you initiate or instigate that kind of thing? And so I put together a couple times now, we do what's called a 90-day boot camp, and it's the Build Your Own Brand boot camp. And so what we do is we work cohesively as a group, and then you share and like one another's content and grow each other's networks organically with each other. And we start off talking about what your brand is. Does it look good? We critique each other. We give each other information. We bring in some of these experts, much like yourselves, to talk to us about how we make good content and how we make that content connective. And then over 90 days, we all work to grow each other's networks, build it organically and connectively, And then at the end of it, it's all, how do you monetize that a little bit? How do you turn followers into purchasers? How do you turn clients into customers? How do you find sponsorship, which is available depending on what kind of content you're making? And now everybody's looking to monetize what they're doing online in a different way. And you should. Anything that you're going to spend this much time and this much effort on, you need to get some sort of return. Now, and that's something especially I talk to kids about all the time. I mean, you talk about your social network and what it's worth for that investment. If you're spending this much time online socially, what are you getting out of it? Do you have friends? Do they talk to you? Can you talk to them if you have a problem? Are you getting something out of them? So you want to very much think about your social media the same way as a company. Are you getting out of your clients and who you're working with the way you want? And that's a lot of what we talk about in my Build Your Own Brand Bootcamp that actually is getting ready to start up in October. If anybody's interested in joining, we start right from the beginning. What is your logo? What is your brand? We talk about trademarking. Much of what I do is in trademark, copyright, and patent law. As an inventor, I'm the vice president of the Inventor Center here in Kansas City, and we talk with folks and bring those kind of specialists on all the time. And so knowing what kind of things you can even protect yourself online is a thing that you want to concern yourself with, especially when it comes to like the AI bots out there now. They can suck up all your content and have use of it if you don't know how to protect yourself from it. So there's a lot coming down the pike that you may want to be savvy about. And so that's kind of why I put like that challenge, that 90-day bootcamp challenge, really puts you all together, really forces you to connect and really grows that network.
I love that. Yeah, that network marketing is definitely a huge tool. And I love what you said there right at the end of how do we monetize it, right? Because until we do that, it's purely just likes and follows, right? A lot of which, if you're not in a group like that, is family and friends, right? So how do we convert those likes and those follows into business, right? Whether that's personal speaking or whether that's a product or a service, right? How do we take that engagement that we're getting online and then convert that to drive the bottom line, right? And make that profit, right? Which is absolutely huge. Kenya nailed it. Create raving fans, right? That way it doesn't matter what platform you're on. If you've got raving fans, right? If Nike were to turn off their Facebook or their LinkedIn or their Instagram tomorrow, you're going to go find them somewhere else, right? Because they have those raving fans. Same with Starbucks, right? All the Starbucks locations in the city could close except one. I guarantee you that one is going to have a line around the block.
Yes.
Because they've got raving fans. They will find you, right? And that's part of creating that holistic online community, right? Is creating those raving fans to where you're building that brand, and it doesn't matter where you're at, right? But obviously, when we get started, we've got to find where they're at, and we've got to meet them there, right? So to loop
yeah.
Absolutely.
Getting out there. That shotgun effect at first, absolutely. You got to put some information out there. You got to throw a bunch of it at the wall to start with until you start to figure out where your clients are and where they are. There is some trial and error, absolutely, that you got to do with a little bit of it. And as you're working in marketing, everybody's trying to chase this virility. You want to have the next viral whatever.
Right.
What I have found to be true across every platform, and it doesn't matter, man, whether you were the first guy on the first commercial on TV or not. You were remembered as the first commercial on TV, but did that sell you any more products? So consistency and putting yourself out there is the right dragon I think you should chase. Too many folks are trying to chase the viral. I want to make something go viral. Well, obviously that can work for you, but if you look at all the people who had virality, what did they do with it? Were they prepared for it? Were they ready for it? Did they profit from it? They got all this exposure, but then what happened? Did they peter out or did they keep it? Now, if you go and look and see who was successful at that, it was those people that figured out what they needed to do for the next step. And so it's a transition, it's an evolution. And so having good guidance from somebody like J29 or whoever that you find that help from is exactly what you want to do. Of all the things that I teach in personal development, it's offloading. It's called sub-processing. If I don't have to take care of this and I can affordably find an expert that does it better than I can for the time and money investment that I would have, why would I not use somebody else's time rather than my own if it's that much better at the product? So, man, find an expert every chance you get for the thing that you don't feel like you have to do for yourself.
And it's always going to be something, right? Nobody can be an expert in everything, right? So humble yourself and figure out that there are. And I tell you, one thing that you made me think about there is I would rather have 0 likes, 0 shares, 0 comments on a post, but create 10 orders than have a million, right? I mean, you could have a million likes, a million shares, it could go viral, right, across the country. But if it doesn't create a purchase, what's the point? Right. Sure. Right. You've got some more brand recognition now, but are you selling anything? right? Are you selling anything more than what you were before that post, right? So vastly important we call them vanity metrics here, right? They're great to have. They're great for awareness, right? The vanity metrics. So I got 1 million likes. Great. How many orders did you get? Right?
Yeah.
If it's 0, we need to change something, right? Because I'd trade all those 1 million likes for 1 order, right? So vastly important. Now, every superhero, Johnny, has a defining moment. What do you think yours is when it comes to your life and career?
There was a thing I used to say to myself, and it got me through. It got me through quite a bit, And it was a term I would say. I said, "I'm going to die. I'm not going to die in this place," and that got me through a lot, And it became less figurative and more, or less literal and more figurative. I'm not going to die here. Whatever it is that I'm doing, I'm just going to keep moving forward. This isn't going to stop me. This isn't going to kill me. This isn't going to quit me. And I was able to carry that with me for a long time until I turned about 40. And one of the things I used to tell myself that carried me through as well was, I'm not going to live past 40, so what does it matter? I was willing to take any risk and do anything for any return because I thought that there was going to be a finite endpoint for me. I was one of those guys. I wanted to live hard and leave behind a good-looking corpse, and I tried really hard at that. And probably the most defining moment in my life was right after I turned 40 and I realized that wasn't going to happen anymore. I kind of went through a bit of a crisis. I went into a bit of a tailspin, because this truth that I told myself for so long suddenly became a lie, And when you tell yourself something that's true and then suddenly becomes a lie, there's a bit of a cascade effect. And probably the most defining moment of my life was when my wife came to me and she said she had a conversation with me. And she said, John, she said, I don't know what's going on. She said, but we have to do something. She said, I'll do anything. But I don't want you to continue to be miserable for the rest of your life. I don't know what it is that's wrong with you, but I don't want you to blame me or feel like I cheated you out of your opportunity in life. And so that one conversation that I had with my wife was probably one of the most transformative that I've ever had, even before when she had saved my life when we were younger, before we got married. But it was after that we had been together for so long, and she recognized that there was something I wasn't talking about, something that was going on inside of me that she could see but couldn't discover. And she had the courage and the audacity to approach me and talk to me about it. And because my conditioning, my tradition had told me I couldn't say it, I had to suffer in silence. I was just going to sacrifice whatever had to happen. And by her coming to me and talking to me, letting me know that there were other options, was probably the most transformative instance in my life. I had achieved a lot and I had attained a lot, but it was all under the instigation and traditions of somebody else's dream or plan or thought. Growing up and having kids and getting married, having a house. I mean, this was all the American dream. This was all conditioned tradition that, although I enjoyed all that and all those were great things for me, none of that gave me fulfillment. None of that really hit me in the heart like it should have or could have. And there was probably the most transformative moment was when somebody outside of my network looked in on mine and saw that there was a problem and asked me what they could do about it. And so if anybody's out there having any kind of trouble, any kind of problem, getting over anything, man, if you can't get it on your own, there's a real misnomer that we have in the mental health space. And it's a people really want to use this because it's all about what side of the coin you're looking at any one time. And they say that everything you need is inside of you. That's true only to a degree. I preach just the opposite, that everything that we need is outside of us. That's why you got to go get it. If you had it, if you didn't need it, you'd already have it, right? All the things that we need are outside of us. So understanding that you alone are not the answer to everything, including some of your own problems. Allowing people to come in or putting yourself into a situation where somebody could come in can be the most transformative thing that you could do for yourself to get you out of the world that you don't want to be in or the world that you're locked into. Sometimes it requires outside intervention. And so that would be probably the most transformative thing that's ever happened to me is my wife and I having that discussion about me quit sacrificing my opportunities for her and pursuing my own, because that's what she wanted for me as well.
That's so powerful. That's so powerful. And it goes back to you're not an expert in everything, even yourself, right? So
that's it.
Sometimes there's some people that we need to lean on out there. And it's good that you were had the wherewithal to realize that, right? Like, you're right. I do need to figure something out here, right? That's hugely powerful. Now we kind of hit on this a little bit earlier, right? Villains and heroes sometimes have similar qualities, right? It's what we do with them that make that distinction. What are the attributes that you feel really define what a hero is?
Oh, well, the attribute. Oh, so willing to a hero is somebody who's willing to do it without return. That they don't recognize. They recognize that the act of doing and acting is return enough. You know, if you see injustice or something in the world, it's one thing to talk about it, to go home and make a post about it. But what did you do to stop it? Did you intervene? Did you help that kid right then and there when they needed that help? Did you help that woman when her husband or whoever this man was being abusive or vulgar to her out in public? Did you try to stand up? You know, there are oftentimes we feel like we don't want to interject because that can sometimes make the problem worse. But the truth is 99% of those situations, just like I talked about a minute ago, require outside intervention for a change to occur. And if you walk past somebody else's problem, you have walked past the opportunity to help them with their problem. So a hero is, to me, somebody who's willing to invest in somebody else's problem.
That is huge. That's huge. I think that says everything. I mean, it's really funny that you say that. I am currently listening to Tiger Woods' biography, and they talk about an early point in his childhood where his dad was belittling his mom, and Tiger wasn't there at the time, but his coach was, or somebody that was in his corner was, and he called out Tiger's dad and said, I don't know what you do when I'm not here. I don't know what goes on behind these doors, right? But you will not talk to her like that in front of me, right? And I was like, wow, how powerful is that, right? Where he's in the Woods home and talking to Eldrick like this, right? About Tiger's mom. I was like, you know, how incredible, how powerful is that? And I 100% agree. Having that courage to get out there and actually say something is massive.
We talk about oftentimes about, you know, breaking cycles. You know, that right there, that's a moment where that happened for him. You know, you don't have to go and jump deep into somebody's life to have an effect on it. When you see injustice, calling it out oftentimes is enough to have effect. Now, it may take years before it manifests, man, but when you see it, you gotta call it out when you see it. Now, this doesn't mean you got to go get in a fight with everybody everywhere all the time, and that's not appropriate either, to put your nose in everybody else's business. But when it's apparent, when it's obvious, when you know you need to act, when you feel your heart jumping out of your chest, man, that's when you really need to come in with that precision. And you need to think about, what am I going to do in a situation like this? You know, so I'm not reactive. What are my options? What are my opportunities? Could I call somebody and leave a message someplace? Could I call her after the fact and see if she needed help? Could I follow them home to make sure they're okay? What are some of these other options that maybe would be available to me that I don't think if I hadn't thought about it ahead of time? You know, and so really, if you're somebody who wants to be a hero, it's just like, you know, Superman practiced out in the field before he went flying around through the city and saving folks. You got to think about what you're going to do and what you would do in these situations if you do want to help somebody. Get yourself educated, get some precision in there, decide what you want to do, and then be able to act when the opportunity arises.
Absolutely. It's huge. That's absolutely massive. Johnny, last question I'm going to ask you here, buddy, and this is the one that puts everybody on a spot usually, but if you had to compare yourself to any superhero that's out there, which one of them best relates to John E Avocado, and tell us a couple reasons why.
Oh man, that's a tough one. That's a really tough one. I would probably the old archetype Batman. You know, I embraced the alter ego. There's a bit of a life that, you know, sets outside of the one that I sometimes show to everybody. The other one might be Iron Man. I really take that on sometimes. I really feel like I suit up. I really feel like that sometimes that's who makes me be who I am, is to really suit up like that and to feel like I'm all powerful. I want to try to bring my knowledge to the situation every chance I get. So that makes me feel powerful. But the truth is that I really feel like I take aspects of all of them. And probably the thing that I take from all of them was what they all share. You know, we talked a little bit about ego earlier. You know, I'll give one more here. So I talked to the folks at the BTBY when they left, and they went out on their journey that I wanted to have them turn into a quest. The ego was the one thing that I told them that they had and they carried with them. The third thing that I told them was that they had something with them that all heroes have. You know, and it's a burden that's also a treasure that you carry with you, and it's your past. You know, and so that's probably the unifier to me and every hero out there is, and that's the thing that we can all maybe self-identify with every hero out there, is that we all have a past. There was a bunch of stuff that happened to somebody. Somewhere a point in time, they decided they were going to make a change about it, and then they decided to go do something about it. And so a hero is somebody as well, is not just thinking about it, not just talking about it, but who has decided to act and continues to act on what they think their intention ought to be. And so, man, it's really hard for me to put my thumb on anyone, because, by God, I take that past, that history, that transformative instigation that they all have and carry it with me.
That's huge. That's huge. I think, kind of what we've related back to quite a bit during this episode is not being a victim, right? And getting out of that kind of victim mindset. I mean, everybody has something, right, in their past that they can look at and say, this is the reason why this is happening, right? And it's not. Right? Just to put it bluntly, it's not, right? You living in that moment and staying in that moment and letting it affect you is what changes that. I think that's absolutely huge. So get out there, be the best you. We love Be the Best You over here. We've had quite a few of you guys on. Brenda's been on the show. Terrence has been on the show. Coffee Cup Chuck, we love. He was one of the OGs on this show. So if you haven't checked out this conference or this experience, right, definitely get out there and do that. I believe the next one, we just passed the last one, right? That was here in Kansas City. Do we have a date set for the next one?
It's in February in Houston. I'm not sure exactly what date. Somebody might throw it up for us. Yeah, down in Houston. It's going to be a real good time.
Amazing, and a great location to do that. So I know the one earlier this year was St. Louis. We just hit Kansas City, and we've got Houston coming up in February. So get out there, check it out. There's also virtual options. There's always virtual options. That's how I've been able to take in quite a bit of the content, as Brenda's gracious enough to put it up there live as it's happening on LinkedIn, which is absolutely amazing. But also get out there and check out OmniLife. It's not just a game, right? There's a ton of different applications that go into this. I know we have a ton of entrepreneurs and business owners that tune into this show. How could VR help you, right? Get out there and check these guys out. How can they get a hold of you guys over there at OmniLife?
The best way is www.omnilifevr.com. You could reach out to us. And, of course, my phone number, I'll throw it up there, 816-832-1276. You can get a hold of me about OmniLife or personal development. Or if you've got an invention idea and you want to know what the ICKC or John E Avocado's got to say about it, you can reach out to us. Probably one of the best things that folks could do is probably just reach out to me through email or by phone. If you visit those websites, all my contact information's there. www.johnnyavocado.com. If you want to join the Build Your Own Brand Challenge, that's coming up. You hit up that one right there, johnnyavocado.com, and you'll find out more information under the shop. And, reaching out to us at OmniLife, you can swing by at Disciples of Gaming. That's www.disciplesofgaming.com or omnilifevr.com.
I love it. And they also have, obviously, all the social media that's out there as well. So we'll just throw up OmniLife's Facebook here, the Instagram. Everything is searchable at OmniLife VR, whatever platform you're on, right? Get out there, check it out. There's some YouTube videos. Also connect with Johnny on LinkedIn, right? You're very active on LinkedIn. Yeah. People can definitely find you there as well. Ask questions about the coaching or the boot camp that's coming up here. And then his Instagram and YouTube as well. Johnny, thank you for coming on the show, man. You're absolutely awesome. I love the energy.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me, Gino.
All right, everybody out there, have a good day. Thanks for tuning in.
Hey, are we still live? Hey, guys, we're still live. Hey, guys, this is Kevin Kwok, founder of J29 Creative Group. So who are we? We're a marketing agency here in Kansas City. We're all about a holistic approach to marketing that builds your brand and nurtures online community. But to be honest with you, you guys don't care.